welcome to video 3, Surrendering Control, sponsored by the Rock Counseling Group in Champaign, Illinois. So John, let's just jump into it.
Let's jump in. So obviously last video we talked about what to take control of, what we can identify that is within our control. Oftentimes as people, we tend to really trip over what we can't control. And we spend a lot of time worrying.
Especially with this. There's so much we can't control.
Right. And I'm thinking about, again, a lot of those responses that we got from nurses. And so hopefully last video helped kind of identify all right, where can I actually take control of my own health? How can I advocate? How can I deal with some of these things? I tend to think that there's two phrases as it pertains to surrendering control that let us know we need to surrender it. Typically when our brains are doing what if or something that has happened and we're doing a lot of should statements about it.
Are we shoulding all over the place?
There it is. Shout out. Should about okay, well, this should have happened differently. I should have done better here. The hospital should be, the world, the nation should be. There's so much of that. Yeah,
this person should be doing these things. I don't see them doing it, or out in public and all that kind of stuff.
Right. So those two things, the what ifs and the shoulds, I think are big culprits as it pertains to getting stuck.
Yeah.
And not being able to let go of the things we can't control. As I always say, we have to be able to stop and say, well, what am I spending time on that I can't control?
Yeah.
It's important to identify that.
Yeah.
We talked last video about evidence. We talked about what are my protocols, what are my tasks. That's all the stuff that when we identify that, well, the stuff outside of it where we're looking ahead or we're looking behind, often, unless there's someone we can go and speak to about something that could be happening, often that's out of our control, and it's important that we let it go.
And it's been tough with this because there's such a community aspect of this. It's not just at the hospital, but it's are these people doing all these things that I think that they should? And if they're not doing these things, it means it's going to get worse. And it's well, we're spending our time just focusing on it when it's can I really control that? Because I can't control anyone outside of myself, right? And it's just you can find yourself getting in these cyclical thoughts of what about what all these people are doing or not doing or talking about and whatnot.
Right. I mean, yeah, if you're concerned about something and then you're you know what, I could actually do something about this, then great.
Yeah, that's very different, right?
Outside of that, I want to talk about this concept of radical acceptance. Which is being able to identify those things in your mind you can't control, especially when it's mistakes you've made or areas where you feel like you could have handled something better. Maybe it happened with a patient.
Nurses, yes, there's a lot for nurses in terms of that, but go on ahead.
Can use a lot of should statements with ourselves. I shouldn't have made that mistake. I should have known better. I should have said this to a patient or not. And it's fine to identify where we make mistakes, but being able to change that to, I'm frustrated, I'm disappointed that happened, or I'm disappointed that I did that. Okay, now I'm going to refocus on what I learned from it, or just learn to say, okay, that's already happened. I'm going to move forward. Whether it's, those should statements or we're dealing with, the what ifs. Again, nurses saying I worry, and understandably so, that I'm going to bring sickness home to my family. I'm worried about this virus and the X, Y, and Z of where it could go, with my patient hospital on a larger scale. But it's we don't have the info for that, the evidence. We're just worrying and ruminating.
That's a good word, ruminating.
Right. Just being on a wheel. Being able to stop and say, yeah, this is hard. This is worrisome. But then we refocus.
So not getting lost in the fear and the worry, kind of acknowledging it but pulling yourself out is what I hear you saying.
Yeah, and I'm a big fan of that word refocus because I think That's part of what helps us let go of control, is refocusing, acknowledging that it's there because it's normal to feel those things.
Yeah.
But then after we've acknowledged it, refocusing so that we stop spending the mental energy on all these things that they're not ours to grab onto.
That makes sense.
And something I often talk to people too about is values. And I think this goes along again with some of the moral injury that you talked about, that nurses and frontline workers struggle with. There's times where situations come up and they really do seem like they're out of your control because they're coming from top down.
Yeah.
I disagree with the way this is being handled. I don't think this is best practice, best case scenario. And there are times where once we've identified that and we're anxious, we're worried about it, and we refocus, we can refocus to, well, what do my values say in terms of how I want to navigate this? So again, it goes back to, what can I control? What do my values tell me? And there may be times where your values say, hey, you know what? There's a tough step we have to take here, and that I disagree to the point where I don't want to, follow through with what's being said. And then there's other times to say, it's a tough situation. My values don't tell me I need to do anything about this. I'm just going to acknowledge this is a really difficult situation, and there's hard decisions and hard things I'm having to navigate, as well as maybe others. But now, again, I'm going to refocus to what I'm going to do in this moment and what's within my control. I think that refocusing helps us let go.
Yeah, because then you're making that decision out of that balanced place and considering your value. Because I think the response that I got from some nurses who are suffering from moral injury, meaning I'm being asked to do things that I don't think align, is that gives you that pause to say, wait a sec, does this align? If it doesn't, what steps do I need to take? It turns it into an actionable process. Again, stepping into the driver's seat. And if you do have to make a tough decision, that's kind of part of life. And there's been nurses who have had to make tough decisions. But sometimes that's the best thing you can do for yourself at that time.
Right. And I think, the times where you identify, I need to let this go, something that can be helpful, I'm going to let you talk about, is self-compassion. Sometimes we have a hard time letting things go because we don't think the right answer is that we can let it go. Self-compassion can help with that. So
self-compassion is certainly something that I feel very passionate about, and there's a lot of evidence that is used, there's been studies that have been done on nurses who use self-compassion, and it yields some amazing results. It's got an inverse relationship actually with burnout. So nurses who practice high levels of self-compassion have low levels of burnout, and nurses who have high levels of burnout have very little self-compassion going on. So it's a very powerful practice, and particularly in critical care where you're seeing people at the end of their life, and you're kind of at the helm with that situation. So it is a 3-step process that I'm going to explain, but I'm also going to put resources in with this module as well. So the first step is mindfulness, and not meditation, mindfulness. And it's kind of what we were talking about earlier. It is, your amygdala has responded to this situation, and this is kind of calming the response, naming the emotion or the situation. And it can be as simple as saying, I'm in a tough situation. This is really hard. This is really scary. I feel scared. One of the things I've heard repeatedly from psychologists is calling that the name it to tame it thing. And it literally calms our amygdala reactivity, which is what we desperately need when we're in those highly charged situations. Then the next step is called common humanity. So when we're in a tough situation, when we're suffering, we tend to think that we're the only ones who were maybe stupid enough, dumb enough, crazy enough, whatever enough to experience that or put ourselves in that. We deserve it or whatever. But it's really important to actively remind ourselves that we're all humans on this imperfect life journey, and we all screw up. We all have things that don't go the way that we planned for them to go. We all have really challenging moments. So to actively remind ourselves that we're human is really powerful. So that what that looks like in the moment is simply like, the first step of this is a tough moment, just simply saying, you know what? Everybody has tough moments. Everybody has challenging, everybody messes up sometime. And then the third aspect is called self-kindness. So we kind of like round it all out with a little bit of warmth, to tell ourselves, you know what, it is going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
I am going to get through this. May I give myself the kindness I need? May I give myself the warmth that I need?
Mm-hmm.
And that really helps complete that whole picture. And this happens in a matter of moments. You tell yourself this when you're at the bedside with that patient who is dying, and you're like
Mm-hmm.
in that tough empathy, about to drown in empathy. This is how you pull yourself back out of the water and balance out that mental response with these 3 steps. So again, it's mindfulness, common humanity, and self-kindness. And you can just do that in a matter of moments in your brain. No one needs to know you're doing this. I do this all the time. It's very powerful, and it helps me turn reactions into responses.
Mm-hmm.
I get to I kind of have more autonomy over myself to be able to choose how I want to respond in an emotionally charged situation. And then you surrender control, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what you go through that, and then you're kind of in this more balanced place, controlling what you can and accepting what you can't.
Yeah. And you had mentioned the word meditation. You're saying mindfulness is not meditation, but I do want to talk about breathing for a second as it relates to surrender and control.
Mm-hmm.
That can be another good practice. Number one, physiologically, it does teach your body to unclench,
Mm-hmm.
to relax the tension, but also just to allow maybe some of those thoughts that are keeping you stuck in that emotion, being able to just let them go by and breathe through them.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes that teaches us to have a different relationship with those thoughts that we feel like we can't let go of, and just teach ourselves to relax and just see them as thoughts we can let go by.
Yeah, meditation is very powerful. One of the easy things, you can get them on YouTube, free ones, too, that are guided meditations that you can also do on your off time. The Calm app has a ton of them,
Right.
and helps kind of, if you're new to it, gives you a little structure.
Yeah, and just to sprinkle this last thing in here, I love this saying, in terms of being able to let go of thoughts or just see them just as thoughts, is thoughts are like birds. We can't stop them from flying over our head, but we don't have to let them make a nest in our hair.
Mm-hmm.
And so we can learn that, oh my gosh, I'm having this thought, I can't let it go. Thoughts come and go. We can learn to breathe and see them in a different light.
And that, I have one little one I want to throw on there too. I heard Dr. Nicole LePera, one thing that she's a psychologist. Freedom is not believing every thought you think.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, a lot of us think that because we think something, it is true. And that could not be farther from the truth. There are all those birds flying around.
For
like
sure.
the fly that's flying around us right
now. And so I want to finish this video up with more of maybe a heavy topic. I'll keep it short and sweet.
All right.
What do we do? How do we deal with a world as uncertain as this one, where things don't work out the way that they should? We'd like them to. This stuff doesn't play by the rules.
Yeah.
And how do we make peace with that? I'm going to leave that open-ended. I think that's just the reality of the world we live in, regardless of what a person believes. We die. Situations that are kind of unbelievable, like we wouldn't think it would happen this way. They aren't fair. That stuff happens in this world, and that's what we're dealing with. And who or what we put our trust in, we have to evaluate that and identify where am I trying to hold on to things that, I'm trying to hold on control when it's like, I can't control this. And that's the world we live in. And so I kind of leave that open-ended. That's kind of an existential therapy type question. People have different beliefs about this world, this life. People find peace and meaning in different ways. I know who I find peace in and meaning, but But I think that's a question that we all have to grapple with when it comes to surrender and control.
And I think that probably can be challenging when you're not sure what that answer is, and if you're not comfortable with not knowing how that big picture. So that can almost, I think, add to the anxiety when you have it that's there in life, I think, in general. And then you have this big virusy thing where there could be death that you see exposed to whatever. It really, I think, brings those kinds of questions to the surface.
Yeah, it's definitely, again, an existential therapy type question there. But I just think it's important to sprinkle in because it's somewhat of the reality of the world we live in. Yeah,
and can be the kind of core of maybe some of the responses that we're having.
Could be.
So that really rounds out our video of surrender and control. So thank you so much to the Rock Counseling Group for sponsoring this. If you would like to check out their telehealth options, we'll throw a link up on the screen for you. Thanks, guys.